it's always humbling to talk about teenagers and raising children. I always feel, Angela and I feel the same way. I think anytime we talk about marriage or family, you just sort of kind of, you hold your breath and you don't, because nobody wants to be the expert, right? Because just when you think you are, you realize you're not. So yeah. I guess that's my disclaimer of humility here, that we don't know everything, and we certainly feel very blessed and feel like we have learned some things, but believe we have much more to learn, and I'm sure you feel the same way.
We do have 3 girls. Our oldest, gosh, Matt met Stassi when she was 8 months, Matt. So that little 8-month-old, when he met her, is now married and has a baby. And
which means we're grandparents.
We're grandparents, which is really weird. And they're great aunt and great uncle over there. So, and then our middle child is a senior in college down in San Antonio at Trinity University and wants to continue with school. And to get her PhD. So we'll see about that. But, and then our youngest is a senior in high school. So,
yep.
All girls. We have all girls.
Yep. So we're on the back slope to empty nesterhood. So we'll see how that works out for us. But Matt asked us to share. He said, I guess the theme of what y'all are be talking about here this month is about how to build faith in our children. And that's a big question. And I'm glad you guys are devoting a month to it. You probably need more than that. We thought we would just add a few things to the conversation, knowing that there's no way we could answer that question in 30 minutes, right. Completely, but we can offer a few thoughts. Knowing that you guys are probably all in different places, we thought that some generalities would be good to start with. And then, if we have questions, we want to talk particulars, we can in the questions. So a few years ago, when I was working on my doctorate, I took a course in adolescent spiritual development. And one of the things that came out of that, and actually has been affirmed in many different ways by many different people, John Louis and others, is that there's 3 primary tasks of adolescence. Mm-hmm. So when you think about raising kids, there's these 3 things that are primary for them. The first thing is belonging. And that is, where do I fit in? So every kid, and I'm sure you remember this when you were a kid, as you're growing up, there's this big question in your mind, right. Where do I fit in? Where's my place? And so belonging is a core need. The second one is identity. Who am I? And so certainly identity is another question that has to be answered in adolescence as kids mature. Mm-hmm. And then the third one is autonomy. And this, this one's probably one we all recognize and feel the most, because kids are always pushing, asserting their autonomy, wanting to make their own decisions, right? And they're actually asking the question in their mind, do my choices matter? Mm-hmm. And so these 3 things I feel like are critical. We want to talk about them. And interestingly enough, when we were kind of looking some things up online, we came across an article from Psychology Today, and it's from 2017. And the title of the article was 10 Reasons Teens Have So Much Anxiety Today. Mm-hmm. And I don't know about you, but we've seen this. Our own children have had some bouts with anxiety. Yeah. And we've seen this in many other kids their ages. Yeah. And this article brought out 10 things. We wanted to kind of read a few excerpts from it just as a way of introduction, really, but to kind of prove the point, because all 10 of these things are connected to belonging, identity, and autonomy. Yeah. And so these were the 10 things, and we'll kind of read you little snippets for each one.
We'll blast through these and
we're gonna blast through it. So I can send you later the article name if you want to look it up. Sure. Number 1, electronics offer an unhealthy escape. Constant access to digital devices let kids escape uncomfortable emotions like boredom, loneliness, or sadness by immersing themselves in games when they are in the car, or by chatting on social media when they are sent to their rooms. And now we're seeing what happens when an entire generation has spent their childhoods avoiding discomfort. Their electronics replaced opportunities to develop mental strength, and they didn't gain the coping skills they need to handle everyday challenges. And I think about that one, and And certainly belonging has a lot to do with that.
Connection.
Right? Connection and belonging.
Yep. So the second one is happiness is all the rage. Happiness is emphasized so much in our culture that some parents think it's their job to make their kids happy all the time. I know I felt this way before. When a child is sad, his parents cheer him up, or when she's angry, they calm her down. Kids grow up believing that if they don't feel happy around the clock, something must be wrong. That creates a sense of inner turmoil. They don't understand that it's normal and healthy to feel sad, frustrated, guilty, disappointed, and angry sometimes. And that one is connected to identity.
Number 3, parents are giving unrealistic praise, saying things like, you're the fastest runner on the team, or you're the smartest kid in your grade, doesn't build self-esteem. Instead, it puts pressure on kids to live up to those labels. That can lead to a crippling fear of failure or rejection. Once again, connected with identity.
Parents are getting caught up in the rat race. Many parents have become like personal assistants to their teenagers. They work hard to ensure the teens can compete. They hire tutors and private sports coaches and pay for expensive SAT prep scores. They make it their job to help their teens build transcripts that will impress the top school, and they send the message that their teen must excel at everything in order to land a coveted spot at a college. That can affect autonomy.
Kids aren't learning enough and learning emotional skills. We emphasize academic preparation and put little effort into teaching kids the emotional skills they need to succeed. In fact, a national survey of first-year college students revealed that 60% feel emotionally unprepared for college life. Knowing how to manage your time, combat stress, and take care of your feelings are key components to living a good life. Without coping skills, it's no wonder teens are feeling anxious over everyday hassles. Once again, we're talking about autonomy here and being able to handle things on their own.
Yep. I think the next 3 or 4 are about autonomy. Parents view themselves as protectors rather than guides. Somewhere along the line, many parents began believing their role is to help kids grow up with as few emotional and physical scars as possible, which, I mean, obviously we don't want them to have scars, but they become so overprotective that their kids never practice dealing with challenges on their own.
Number 7, adults don't know how to help their kids face their fears the right way. At one end of the spectrum, you'll find parents who push their kids too hard. They force their children to do things that terrify them. And on the other end, you'll find parents who don't push their kids at all. They let their kids opt out of anything that sounds anxiety provoking. Exposure is the best way to conquer fear, but only when it's done incrementally.
Parents are parenting out of guilt and fear. Parenting stirs up uncomfortable emotions like guilt and fear, but rather than let themselves feel those emotions, many parents are changing their parenting habits so they don't let their kids out of their sight because it stirs up their anxiety, or they feel so guilty saying no to their kids that they back down and give in. Consequently, they teach their children that uncomfortable emotions are intolerable.
And number 9, kids aren't being given enough free time to play. While organized sports and clubs play an important role in kids' lives, adults make and enforce the rules. Unstructured play teaches kids vital skills like how to manage disagreements without an adult refereeing. And solitary play teaches kids how to be alone with their thoughts and comfortable in their own skin. Again, these are connected to identity and autonomy in this particular case.
And then the last one, family hierarchies are out of whack. Although kids give the impression that they like to be in charge, deep down they know they aren't capable of making good decisions. They want their parents to be leaders, even when there's dissension in the ranks. And when the hierarchy gets muddled or even flipped upside down, their anxiety skyrockets.
So, we thought this was interesting to kind of just sort of point out, because even in the secular world, they're identifying these things and these shortcomings in parenting, right? With children of this generation. And the things that they're pointing out all go back to those 3 basic needs of belonging, of identity, and of autonomy. So we want to talk for just a few moments about some practicals on how to build those 3 things. Obviously, every one of those could be an entire lesson or series to themselves, but we thought we'd just throw a few things at you and see what sticks to the proverbial wall. So first of all, in terms of keys to building autonomy in our kids, in other words, by autonomy, we're talking about their ability to function independently, make good decisions, that sort of thing. The first key for that is positive words, just affirmations. I know that one of the things in the article was fake affirmations. We're not talking about fake, blowing sunshine, Adam. We're talking about, truthful, honest affirmation. Ephesians 4, just a few scriptures for you. Ephesians 4:29. Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouth, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. I mean, certainly that applies to our children. Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. In Proverbs 18:14, the human spirit can endure in sickness, but a crushed spirit who can bear? I think it's so important that we encourage our children and find things, not to make up stuff, but to find ways to build them up and to praise them. I was trying to think of examples. I know, well, many of you saw our daughter Savannah singing with the San Antonio church this past Sunday. Well, years ago when she was in high school, I still remember having conversations with her because I could tell she was gifted, but she didn't believe it. And I remember pushing her pretty hard to join the worship team. She was a disciple at this point, probably 14 or 15 years old. And I remember just encouraging her and saying, look, you can do this. And it's so crazy to look now to see this little kid who got up on the stage to sing, scared out of her mind, wouldn't smile, wouldn't, project her voice to have developed, that skill to the point where she's up there belting it out on stage. And the same thing happened with our youngest daughter, who is now part of our worship team, and here in Austin. And each of them, I think a lot of it had to do with prayer, just encouraging them and
helping them work through their fear.
Yeah, also. Exactly. So positive words, an example. You were going to mention something like that.
Yeah, I know for me, I think we think a lot of positive ththings about our kids, but we don't always say them out loud. And I think there's a lot we can be critical about, right? I mean, I see that in my parenting. There's, you can nitpick a million different things. You didn't pick up your clothes and you were late and you didn't, you got on Zoom 10 minutes late for your class and, all the new things for this year, right? And you were disrespectful to your mother. And, there's a list of things that we could talk about. And we usually do, but I think they, just like us, we need lots of positive affirmation. They need the same, and they need it even more. Because being a teenager, I don't know about you guys, but I don't want to go back to being a teen ever. It's such a time of insecurity and all that. And so they need the extra encouragement. And I see the way teens talk to each other in the world too. They cut each other down. Like that's how they joke with each other. It's all I notice it's just negative. So they're getting so much negative feedback from every source. And so they need our positive affirmations, not necessarily in what they do, but who they are and their character. And again, I think I know we all think these things about our kids. I know we think that our kids are great, but I think sometimes we just don't verbalize it. We don't say it out loud. And we think, oh, well, they know that, but they don't necessarily know it if we don't say it. Think of something that was said to you when you were a teen. Think of something positive. I'm sure we all have at least one teacher, parent, friend, or something that said something really positive to us when we were a teenager. And it really was a lifeline for us. And we really hung on to that. Think about whatever that was, write it down, and then go and say something like that to your own kid. I think we just can't underestimate how important those encouraging words are. Yeah. Anyway, I think that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah.
Praising effort rather than the results.
Yeah. And all that affects autonomy because it sets the stage, it sets the atmosphere for them to have the confidence to be able to learn and grow. There's a quote that says, live with encouragement, learn with confidence, right? And that's kind of a great philosophy of, providing an atmosphere of encouragement in our homes that then inspires them to become autonomous. I know that's kind of scary. This is the dance, right, of parenting teenagers is we've always had control over them, and we're having to let that go and give them autonomy at some level, in measure, of course, over time. And it's a hard dance. It is a dance. That's the way I like to describe it. It's a dance. And, the real battle, I think, with our children is understanding their autonomy and our control. And our goal is for them to be healthy and autonomous in a good way. But understand they still do need our direction and guidance. So that's one thing, positive words. Another way we can help with autonomy is quality time. I think of scriptures like Deuteronomy 6, Titus 2, that talks about, the older generation teaching the younger generation. Obviously, as parents, we need to take time out to work with our kids, to teach our kids. And so the quality, it's the quality of time plus the quality of conversations with them. And I think it takes time. And even again, you're helping them build autonomy. It's not telling them what to do. It's trying to nurture that in them. I think about our kids as they were, kind of coming around to faith and trying to figure that out. I asked my daughter tonight, my 17-year-old, I said, hey, we're doing this thing tonight. Tell me, give me a nugget. What helped you?
Or what didn't help?
Or what didn't help? Or, tell me, give me something I can share, and the thing that came out, she's like, well, you guys didn't push us. And she goes, I see other parents that push their kids and the kids kind of push back. And I think
you mean push us spiritually?
Spiritually. Yeah, spiritually. Right. And so, our philosophy, my philosophy has always been, for right or for wrong, this is my philosophy. Okay. Is I like to kind of lean in. I like to poke and then retreat, kind of lean in and retreat, and then wait for them to open the door. So we would always, kind of talk with them. I try to find, situations where our kids were, where there was a good time for a spiritual conversation. Maybe we're coming back from church after a sermon that was particularly appropriate, or maybe it was a baptism, or maybe it's a current event that was disturbing to everybody, and we'd use that to begin to talk. And I would just ask the question, say, what are you thinking about your spirituality? And how teens are. Sometimes they're like, nothing, it's okay. And they didn't give me anything, then I wouldn't push. Okay. And I'd move on and we talk about something else. But you know what, you kind of poke, and then one of the times they actually start talking, and that's when you jump. That's when you kind of, okay, now we're having a conversation. And we would look for those opportunities. But if you're not having regular quality time, you're not having those conversations, we might miss out, or we end up compensating by pressing too hard.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I think I was just thinking of, the challenges with COVID. I think probably most of you guys were around our kids more because they're home a lot more. But I think, I know for me, I need to make, just because I'm in the same house with Kalia doesn't mean I'm actually spending time with her. So I think just being cognizant of that and making sure, okay, yeah, we're around each other all the time, but are we actually spending time talking, or not just in front of the TV, or are we actually having interactions and quality, like Dave said, again, some quality fun time together, because that's so needed. Again, they a lot of times our teens want to be by themselves or be with their friends or whatever, which is more difficult right now during COVID, but they also do still need time with us. And I think just making sure that time happens even during COVID.
Yeah. Another way, again, just talking about autonomy, another key there is just believing in them, having belief. Yeah. To be believed in is an important part of obviously of developing autonomy. That faith is so important. I think about how Jesus was with his disciples, and certainly he, in many different ways, he expressed confidence and belief with them. Sometimes he called them out for their own unbelief, but you never doubted that Jesus believed in them. And I think that's something that we want to communicate with our kids. God has a plan for them. And sometimes that's kind of hard to see, especially when we're in the middle of teenage angst and raging hormones and all the other fun things that go along with raising teenagers. But we've got to always communicate belief, and which, because that's going to help them with their own security and self-esteem. You want to say something about labeling?
Yeah, I think just being careful not to label, being aware of emphatic statements like you're so lazy, or you're so, you are this, instead of your behavior lately has been less than desirable. Your behavior has been, you've been, not doing what I've asked you to do, you've been undisciplined, or, again, to point out behavior, not character. It's easy to, I've said these things. I've told my kids, you were so lazy this week, or, whatever, you're disrespectful. Again, kind of, I think it's so, and those things stick with our kids. These you are statements, we probably have them, even if we're not even cognizant of it. We still have stuff that rolls around our head of things that people said to us, the way they've labeled us, negative and positive. But what usually sticks? The negative. And so I think, we've got to be careful not to say those emphatic statements, you are this, unless it's positive, right? I think that's part of really believing in them and who God created them to be, even if they're not behaving that way, but believing that they can be that way. Because labels are huge. that's constant in the world around us. I mean, doesn't matter any kind of social media. I mean, the kids are constantly trying to figure out who they are, and everybody's labeled this or that. And it's ridiculous, the pressure that they're under in school and all other kinds of things to, what are you, this or that, and it's frustrating, I know, for them. And so we need to make sure we are again filling them with lots of belief, and that they are simply, they are loved by God, they are loved by us, they are treasured, they are they are special to us, they are important to us, they're important to God. All these things are so important, and obviously we have to be sincere in what we're saying. We can't just, like Dave said earlier, just blow sunshine. We have to be sincere, because they will know if we are not being sincere.
They can sniff that out.
They can sniff that out pretty easily. But I think those things are really important.
Yeah.
Communicating belief.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, in terms of autonomy, having expectations, Hebrews 12:11 says, no discipline seems pleasant at the time, but painful. Later on, however, it produces a harvest of righteousness and peace for those who have been trained by it. Mm-hmm. And then Proverbs 29:21, I like this one. It says, a servant pampered from youth will turn out to be insolent. And, I think that, expectations, discipline, whatever you want to call it, certainly having expectations for our kids is important. There's this concept, actually, from the same course that I took in my grad program, there's this concept I'd never heard of before called extended adolescence. And basically, adolescence used to be essentially sort of that weird period between 13 or 15 and 18 or something. It was a few years, and then you're off to college or out of the house or whatever. They now have they've coined a new phrase called extended adolescence, and it goes all the way to 27 years old. And part of that's because of the phenomenon that so many kids in their 20s are still living at home, still trying to figure out what they want to do. And so these struggles for belonging, identity, and autonomy, instead of sort of being a brief period kind of in their early teens, is now extended all the way into their late 20s.
Yeah.
And, obviously that's tragic, because it doesn't need to be that way. And so I think part of that is just having expectations of our kids. We always laugh. I'm sure most of y'all are probably like me. Some of y'all are my age, but when I was growing up, man, my parents were like, yo, when you're 18, you're out, get a job, you got to pay your way, and we'll see you at Thanksgiving and Christmas and, that sort of thing. And I'm exaggerating a little bit, but honestly, it's kind of that was my takeaway. And so when I got to be 18, I was like, all right, I'm gone, but that was the expectation of the culture. And I think that and I appreciate those expectations.
Right.
And, certainly it's hard to do, because going back to that article in Psychology Today, we don't like to let our kids fail. And failure actually is not a bad thing, because they learn something from it. And, I learned this early on when my kids started doing science fair projects. You guys ever have kids that do science fair projects? And I honestly got really excited when my oldest daughter started doing science projects, because that means I got to do them too.
Uh-huh.
It was exciting for about a year or two. Anyways, so I remember one year, we burned different materials and did this experiment, and I helped her with the board, and I think she actually went to the state science fair with that project. Then the year later, the next year, she and I built a trebuchet. That was fun. And so then by year 3, I realized when my daughter came to me for time for the science fair, she was waiting for me to come up with the project
and do
it for her. And I realized at that point that I had crippled her. Right. And so I was like, that's it. Nope. I'm going to let you're doing this on your own. And man, that project looked terrible. I mean, the board didn't look right, because the kid didn't know what to do, because I didn't let her do it. Right. And that's a silly example, but I think that it's so important that we let our children figure it out. And they're going to make mistakes. And that happens on something as simple as a science project or a missed assignment at school. It also is true when it comes to spiritual things, and they're going to make mistakes. Yeah. And I think we have to kind of check ourselves and make sure we don't overreact, have expectations, but also allow them that autonomy, if you will, to make some mistakes and fail, because that's going to teach them.
Yeah, I mean, I think what Dave said earlier, when we look at Jesus, I mean, that part of Jesus's belief in the disciples, when we were talking about it, he had high expectations for his disciples, right? But it was coupled with grace. And I think it's the same thing with us and our kids. We need to have high expectations, but also couple it with grace. And I think trust for us, I don't know, I speak to the moms, I think there's part of trust too, kind of letting go of that control and letting them fail, and allowing them to be unhappy if they fail or make a mistake. It's taken me a long time to learn that I'm not responsible for my children's happiness. They are responsible for their own. But that can be hard to let go and to let them fail. And to we just had this whole thing. Our daughter wants to go see her best friend in Boston, who she doesn't get to see very often, and she doesn't really have the money to pay for it right now, and babysitting jobs are few and far between because of COVID. And so she's really wanting to go. And we just had this whole thing yesterday, back and forth of what do we do? Because, I'm sure she will get more jobs and she'll be able to pay us back. Do we pay for it ahead of time? And she's kind of on credit, and she's always good to pay us back. But is this what we want to teach her? And we had to weigh that honestly with, this is one of her best friends she only gets to see once a year. And it's really important for her spiritually. And it's a really, I don't know if we made the best decision. We're going to use our points to get our plane tickets, but it was really tough because there's a spiritual side to this and there's a responsibility side, and we're like, what do we do? So those decisions can be really hard sometimes. But I think it's even just us talking it through with her and having the conversation and talking about what this means has been important. But those things can be hard. We wanted to show a clip from College Road Trip, but we don't have time. Go back and watch the movie. It's very good illustration for all of this kind of stuff. Right? Yes.
It is.
College Road Trip. If you've never seen it, but we don't have time.
Yep. Okay, so to wrap up here, because I'm going to want to leave a little time for some questions and answers. So identity and belonging. Okay, so as far as identity goes, how do you build identity in your kids or help them build their identity? Well, we have to teach the heart. Matthew 5:8 says, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God." And heart is obviously always the issue. And this is, it's interesting because kids, as they grow, as teens are going into their adulthood and God willing, investigating faith and wanting to consider following Jesus and being a disciple, what we all want them to do. It's very important for them that it's their journey. And it's such a weird thing because kids don't want, there's this thing that to make it their own, it almost has to not be yours. And I know that sounds kind of weird. Yeah. I grew up in a Christian home, and I remember feeling this way that, part of me didn't want to become a Christian simply because my parents were. Like, I know it doesn't make any sense, and it didn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. But I didn't want to just do what they did. I wanted to make my own decision. And it took me a while to kind of sort through that and understand, just because it's the right decision, it's the same decision they made, doesn't mean that it's not my decision. And I had to kind of come to that conviction. I'm seeing that now, even with some of the teenagers in our congregation that are studying the Bible, and I've seen it in my own kids. I mean, I don't know how many kids there in Nashville. I know we have some kids that like to do the clandestine Bible studies, right? It's like
studying the Bible, but don't tell my parents.
Tell my parents. It's like, I want to study on this. Yeah. One of our daughters did that. Of course, I mean, I don't know what she was thinking. I'll leave the church. I know what's going on, but she's all trying to hide out like she's not saying about. No one knows, I know everything that's going on, but she doesn't know. Anyways, I don't know why she didn't think I knew, but in any case, she's trying to hide it, right? But the reason is that they want it to be their own. And I think we have to be aware of that. Yeah. And so obviously it's teaching the heart conversations, giving them obviously that space to make those decisions, but the Bible has to kind of come alive for them. And so, we've got to be willing to lean into hard conversations, when it comes to just even deep topics that they may be up against, topics. I mean, these days, sexual orientation, what happens, why do bad things happen to good people? I mean, these are some of the conversations that we've had, with our kids, as they've come up along the way. And we can't shy away from those things, but always point back to the heart of the matter.
Or be freaked out by their questions, never let them see you sweat, just taking what they have to say and answering questions. Our middle daughter, I think, was it last year of high school, went through she was already a baptized disciple, but she kind of went through an identity crisis with her faith and had lots of questions. And I've had some conversations with her. She probably had more with Dave and read lots of different books. And she just was really struggling with her faith. Her question, if God is good, then why do bad things happen to good people? And there's some different things that had happened in her life or around her that she was really questioning. And, she's some really hard questions we couldn't always answer, but we talked through it. And, it took her, probably a whole year to kind of work through all of it. But I think we can't shy away from those kinds of conversations. We just have to guide them as they're seeking their own faith.
Yeah. And it's messy.
Is messy.
These conversations are messy, and they don't typically resolve in one conversation. These things can drag on through an entire school year, sometimes more. All Angela and I, we kind of shudder at senior year because it seemed like both of our older two had a rough go at senior year of high school. Our oldest daughter, had some challenges and dated somebody on the sly we didn't know about, and that kind of stuff. And so we're not immune. Our kids aren't perfect, and these situations are hard, and we have to kind of walk through them with them. We have to be committed to that and never give up on them.
Yeah,
because they are trying to figure it out, and they will. So we can't give up on them.
Yep. Last one.
The last thing, and we'll open for questions, is belonging, and just creating belonging. I think that this is another area where, when I was talking to my daughter tonight, and I asked her what she thought, she said, well, we all became disciples pretty early. She goes, but that's just because, that's what we do. Like she was just kind of like, a matter of fact, we're committed. Our family's committed to God and to the church. And there's almost something that was just inherently understood because of our way of life. And I think that's a good challenge for us as parents, because I think it's easy to make excuses about a lot of things in terms of our connection with the body, our connection with the church, connection with, things that are going on, making sure that we are ourselves putting our whole heart in. Our kids see it. And so I know I'm in the ministry, so clearly it's my job. But I don't think that my kids see anything disingenuous in any of that we're all in, regardless of the fact it's a job or not. I think that comes through. And I think that's so important for all of us, is that they see us being all in and really helping. That helps them understand that they have a place of belonging. And I know that that's been challenging over the years, especially, I think Nashville is probably very similar to Austin. Our kids have had, some of their friends, best friends, church member friends that lived across town. And that meant driving, 30 minutes, 40 minutes one way to get them to see their friends, and then going back to there's a commitment, right? Driving and dropping them off for probably 8 years, we didn't really get a Saturday night date because it was teen event night, and we had to drop the kids off. And the teen event wasn't long enough to see a movie or anything else. So then you got to go back and pick them up. And, it's a commitment. It's like, okay, well, it was what we got to do.
Yeah.
But yet I've seen other families who were like, nah, we're not going to do that. And the kids suffer for it. And there's not that belonging because frankly, the parents didn't foster that connection. And so I think that, we have a big part to play in that belonging, by just making sure they get the stuff and making sure that we ourselves are putting our whole hearts into all that we do. So I'm going to stop there. So much more we could say, but time is what it is.
Yep.
So yeah, we'll end on that part right there. So belonging, identity, and autonomy. There you go.